Hello everyone, we have a game with the Black Pieces against MSJC, rated 833. We have a Caro-Kann on the board, or we're going to try, and he plays bishop to c4, developing our bishop, but walking directly into the move we prepared with c6, d5. This is the Hillbilly attack, and we get to recapture in the center with tempo. Oh man, how am I supposed to make videos when my opponents are all Helen Keller? How is he rated 800? Like, I know that's low, but that's not like 300. So he brings out his knight, and okay. Let's find the fastest way to checkmate him. We're not going to play the best moves. We're going to try to checkmate him at all costs. So let's just start with the basic knight development towards the center. What else do we want for our checkmate? Okay, we want this bishop out. Let's pin the knight. Develop and control the center by controlling the knight. So we have two pieces out. Come on, guy, castle. We got to know where your king is to checkmate it. So he hits our bishop. I mean, we could just take, because we're up a piece. It's pretty brutal. Let's do that. That knight's also the defender of his king. Let's take it off the board. So he takes with the queen, hitting this. So if you go pawn hunting, you have no pieces out. You're going to give him counterplay, so don't do that. Instead, let's bring that piece out, block that diagonal, come with more threats. This looks way better. And as I assumed he might, he pushes, but both of these dark squares are great squares for my knight. So there's that. There's also knight b4, which in addition to this hits the pawn, which is interesting, as opposed to the queen, which, although technically the queen would have to defend this pawn, so it can go to these two squares. But then if I play g6, he's toast. But if he goes back home, then I can play e5, protecting my knight. And if he en passant, I can just recapture backwards with my knight. We can go down that line. Although knight b4 is really nice too. And then you could just take the pawn. He's kind of out of luck, right? Yeah, let's go knight b4. I mean, everything's playable, but we'll do this one. I assume at some point he was trying to push this to open this up, but there's just too much going on. He's down a full piece. I mean, I'm not even close to castling, but I don't need to be. I have great development, actually, to an extent. I mean, I'm still undeveloped on the king side for sure. But I have more than enough out, putting in work, creating threats, that it's okay. And my queen is next to my king, defending him. When she's not angry with him, she's defending him. And now this guy's stumped because he sees what I see. Oh, no, he doesn't. I changed my mind. This guy doesn't see anything. He might be legally blind because he walks his queen into two different captures. So we'll take with the pawn because chess doesn't matter anymore. When your opponents play like this, it's like, okay. Let's go over this game. Oh man. So we try to go into a Caro-Kann, and we hit him with the Hillbilly attack. For some reason, lower rated players love bringing their bishop here on move 2. So we just capture, And normally they move the bishop, but here he hangs it, so ridiculous. We just bring a piece out towards the center, and then we bring out another piece which affects the center. And then we take, because that knight was defending his center, defending his king, and we're up a piece. And we develop towards the center with threats. And then we're forced move, and we get to improve it for free. Then he just hangs the queen, so that's preposterous. Okay, one more quick one. We'll see if we can get someone who does not hang their queen. Oh no, not another provisional. But I guess we'll take it. He's rated 935. I don't like the provisionals with the question mark because you don't really know what their rating is. And then if they hang their queen on move 2, it kind of ruins the game. Okay, so now he's playing the Chopava London against us. So this is an interesting reverse showcase. So how do we want to play against it? Well, maybe he's preparing, like I want to play e4. So I'm going to play the move that stops him from playing e4. Even if he wasn't going to play it anyway, which he probably wasn't. Because look, he doesn't even bring the bishop out, Chopava London style. He keeps it in. Way worse idea. And goes e3. That makes our life even easier because we don't have this bishop bearing down on us like a laser. So now we can do whatever we want. What do we want? We can just develop a minor piece towards this nice open diagonal. And then we have a choice. We can, I like to fight for the center because I think it is the right thing to do geometrically. And so e5 or c5 would be the moves that we're looking at. So he just plays a calm pawn push that covers this square for my pieces, but doesn't really do anything. Unless he's planning on pawn storming me, which he very well might be. So I'm going to... you have so many moves. I'm going to play the same move. It may look ridiculous, but if he does pawn storm me, I just have this easy place. Because if you don't make this move and he pawn storms you, yes, his pawns don't belong there, but I don't want to go back here, which is fine. I don't want to go here because then he just continues and I don't want to deal with that. So I'd rather just bring it back, and now that's the end of this story. And his pawns look dumb, right? He looks overextended. And he develops his bishop here. Not a real improvement in my eyes. So I'm going to play, we can go for, again, e5, or we can try to play c5. Like, we can play c6 and go for e5, or we can play e6 and go for c5. That's what I'm trying to say. So which way do we want to go? I guess we'll go just e6 and c5. It looks a little more natural. It doesn't need the knight support, although the knight's going to go there anyway. He develops a knight towards the center. Makes sense. We could play c5 or the knight first. Because his queen can't come out due to his c-pawn, I don't feel the need to put the knight here first. Because he doesn't have a bishop bearing down here, I'm not worried about coordination on the dark squares. So let's attack the center immediately with c5. We can recapture in one go if he takes. If he doesn't take, we simply develop our knight behind the pawn with an excellent and perfectly harmonious position. It looks beautiful. It looks like every piece is where it belongs. So he pushes in the center, maybe threatening to blow up the center a little bit or to push. The drawback is, isn't this pawn hanging? So I'm going to take with my pawn because it displaces one of his two developed knights, the defender of the king. It also takes away the squares from his bishop. So he jumps the knight in the center. However, because he moved his central pawn, he ruined his own pawn chain. And so now his central pawn, because his knight moved as well, is super loose. So we get to take that with tempo, hitting the other knight, displacing both knights, and now we have these ridiculously strong pawns in the center. We even have an extra e-pawn on e6. He throws in his bishop, which does have coordination with the knight. However, we have plenty, 4 pieces defending this square. So you don't want to go here and give him some tactics. You put it to knight on d7, and it's defended enough times because the knight can go backwards. Also, his knight's hanging. Also, we're up 2 pawns. So even if he takes the pawn, okay, now we're up 1 pawn. So he has 1, 2, 3 attackers on our knight. We have 1, 2, 3 defenders on the knight, so adequately defended. So if we go a6, we can force the bishop to either leave or commit by the trade, either way resolving this situation. So he decides to go back, but now this walks into this. If he wants to keep the pin, he has to try to sack the knight. But I don't know how that's going to work. We are going to break this, so now the knight is unpinned. So now we can take his knight potentially if we want to trade. Okay, now that we got in this free move, we have other free moves. For example, bishop to c5, pressuring the queen, which is protecting his knight. Very uncomfortable situation for him. And so we just very calmly make the right moves. And even though it looks like he has his pieces out and his queen's active, he's actually being crushed by our seemingly... You might even say that, like, if you look at the 3 pieces I highlighted, our 2 knights and the bishop, and you look at his pieces, you may think that his are more active, but it's the opposite. It's weird. So he moves his queen back because he didn't want to lose it, but now the knight hangs for free. And now, whose pieces were you thinking were more active? This bishop and knight do absolutely nothing. The other knight was technically hanging, even though it visually looked active. So he develops his bishop, so we can get in more trades, whether queen or piece. And I mean, you could do whatever you want. Let's just take the bishop off the board. One less thing to think about as we convert to the endgame. We also can throw in a check for free, which would force him to move his king. But maybe it would even help him connect his rooks faster, right? Let me just castle. I don't see a pressing need to do anything like that. Even if he castles, you still have this for free. It still comes with check, right? So it doesn't really matter. We're up materials, so we could trade queens if we want, but because his king side's weak, we can even try to sneak it in here with threats, which is annoying for him. So let's throw in this check towards the center. It does 2 things. It just has a potential mating nets because there's a knight by his king. You can even throw it here and force his other bishop to be traded if you wanted it. But it's such a good attacker by the king, and his bishop's pretty dumb, so that doesn't make sense. So I was mentioning how this diagonal is open, and these pieces, these pawns are overextended, and how it might come back to bite him later in the game. So potentially, if I take this pawn, and he takes back, and I go check, he has to go here, and then I go checkmate. So how did I find that? I didn't know about it all along. I did a free move, free improving move. I saw the knight by the king, and then I'm like, oh wait, how do I use this diagonal? I need to get my knight out of the way. I was thinking maybe move it towards the center, but he lined it up like this, so it comes with check. So I'm like, what if I take... Oh, it comes with check. Oh, that's checkmate. So you kind of just find it through reasoning as opposed to you know, foresight. You knew all of this beforehand. Oh wait. Oh yeah. So let me take the pawn. Now he doesn't have to capture it, but then his position collapses either way. In this case, it's going to be forced mate. And we did the pattern with these 3 pieces. Cool, right? So let's go through the game. I thought it was going to be a Jabava London, but it wasn't. We just put a pawn in the center, preventing e4. Develop a piece towards the center. Then we make a move that defends our bishop preemptively, so we don't give him too many free moves. Like, let's say I just bring out the knight or something, and he kicks the bishop. If you ever go forward, he's kicking you with f3 anyway. If you're going to go back, then why'd you put your bishop here to begin with? So you kind of have to go g3, bishop to g3, and then he could use that pawn and displace your knight, and then push his other pawn. And now you're just wasting turns moving your pieces, which, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but that's why h6 just makes life easy, because it stops all those ideas. I mean, he does it anyway, but you can see it's not good anymore, because I have this plays beautiful sniper bishop now. So that doesn't make sense for him. And then I just consolidate my pawn center, development. Center, and better development. And then you can do whatever you want, but we just take a free pawn. And it's for free, so free stuff for free. He goes here, and again, you could do whatever you want. You could take with the queen, you could take with the pawn. We take with the pawn. They like taking with the queen for the specific reason that you don't hang this pawn, so in the other line, you have to keep that pawn. But either way, you're still, I was about to say winning, you're still much better. Technically not a winning position, but. So we just kick the bishop, and even though this may look scary to you, you have to see, okay, well, he has 3. How could he potentially add a 4th? Well, this knight can't do anything. He would have to move his dark square bishop somewhere and then get the rook behind it. That would take a bunch of turns. Does he have those 2 turns? Well, if I kick the bishop immediately, no. He has to either disappear, and then I can move the knight, or he has to take the knight, and in both cases, the situation is resolved. So he doesn't have time to add pressure, therefore it's not scary. So he kicked the bishop, he backs up, which is really bad. He should have just traded. So we just break the pin, of course, and he moves the bishop. And then we develop for free, which of course wins the knight in the center. So it all ended very badly for him. And our position should visually look dominating and overwhelming to you. And then we just trade because we're up a piece. We castle, which is king safety. And then we have a move for free, creating potential mating nets. And then instead of the queen trade, if his pawns were on h2 and g2 normally, you know, his king would be a little bit safer. I would still try to use this and mate him, but with the way they are now, they're especially weak, especially on the dark squares because of all the holes he made. So I don't queen trade. I sack a piece. Yeah, his best shot was to take my queen as like an intermezzo. That way I don't have the mating ideas. But at the end of it, so let's do it. Queen takes. We take back. I don't know which rook. Which one's more natural? I guess the A rook's more natural. Hard to say. And then if he takes the hanging knight, boom. Rook d2, threatening checkmate. Force, and he can't get out of it. He can't move the king, so he has to sack the rook. And of course, his whole position's hanging again. -7 or -13, depending on what he does. So I sack my knight. It's interesting because he can't really move his king either. And he takes the knight, which of course leads to mate, so that's not going to work. We'll get through these ranks pretty quickly. I'm getting a lot of points for these games, so we should work our way through these crazy blunders pretty quickly and go to the next level. Good luck in your chess. See you next time.